This is Tony Delvecchio, and I got a very interesting guest today. If you've been watching Goodfellas over the years, and a lot of people have because they made a lot of money, I've got the guy that got it rolling, Mr. Henry Hill. And Henry,
Glad to meet you, Mr. D. How are you?
how you doing?
Good.
Let me take you back to where it all started. In
please
Brooklyn, well,
That's not.
1950, when you were a kid growing up in Brooklyn. Just give us an idea of what it was all about, because it starts there, your life.
What was it about? It was about, you know, just growing up and, you know, seeing that world of, you know, well, for me, I'm going to tell you how it started. You know, I was a dyslexic as a kid. I didn't know it. I was hypertension. You know, I had about 3 or 4 disorders that they, you know, today that they, you know, they.
Today they give you a pill and you're cured.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My mother used to give me a spoon, and I had a wooden spoon.
Well, if I had any problems, I used to take garlic. Garlic was the trick.
Yeah, that too. But you know, but anyway, and I, you know, at home, I used to get in trouble. There was 8 kids in the family. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. You know, like my older sisters. I had 4 older sisters on top of it. You know, to be blessed with that. You know, and a couple more, you know, behind me. And you know, so I didn't, you know, I didn't understand a whole lot, you know, but I understood what I seen, you know.
And what was that? Tell us, you know, the neighborhoods were basically in the 50s. Every neighborhood was the same. New York, New Jersey, wherever you lived, neighborhoods were neighborhoods.
Yeah, and you know, and what I say, as a kid, I seen the peers in my neighborhood were the wise guys. They opened up a cab stand with a limousine service across the street from my house, you know, and a pizza joint around the corner, you know, and they ran the neighborhood. And those were my idols. Those were the guys that I looked up to. Those were the guys that I thought was something in the neighborhood, you know? I didn't know they were gangsters. I didn't know it was the Murder Incorporated crew. I didn't know it was, you know, what they were. I thought they were good guys, you know, because they used to pat me on the back. In school, they used to stick me in the they used to stick me in the corner, you know, out in the hall, because I couldn't sit still. Even in church, they used to yank me out of the pew, you know, and smack me, you know, at the 10 o'clock mass in front of everybody, my mother, you know, my older sister. So I, you know, I mean, so these guys didn't smack me. They used to pat me on the back, give me money, you know. And these are the guys I started to look up to, and I thought that they were somebody, you know, I thought they were the big shots in the neighborhood.
Well, they were any of your characters in Goodfellas? Was that Paulie at that time, or did that come later?
No, that was those guys, you know, all in the movies, you know, all in that wonderful movie, you know, that Marty made. I mean, it was a great movie, you know. It was, they call it one of the best 50 movies ever made. I mean, you know, I look at it as, to me, it's surreal. You know, I can't, you know, I still look at it.
Well, it's amazing how the public, you know, it's just that they're fascinated with wise guys, people getting whacked. You know, it's unbelievable that something like this can take a run like it's done for the last 50 years. People are attracted. 2 of the best movies of all time was Goodfellas and The Godfather.
Go figure,
and
you know?
The problem is everybody keeps watching them to this day and age. But when did you get into, when you knew, what age did you know where you were going?
Well, I think the first day it ever really hit me was when I seen that guy get whacked and get his hand blown off. You know what I mean? That was in a pizza joint. You know, his name was DeLeo. He was a bookmaker. You know, I don't know what it was. I remember hearing the shots. You know, sitting in front of the joint. We used to sit outside in front of the pizza joint, and I heard the shots. You know, we thought it was firecrackers or backfire. All of a sudden, he come around the corner with his hands looked like a pound of spaghetti. He had at one end of it, you know. And that's when I think the first time, you know, I seen a guy go, you know, I heard, yeah, you know, I heard, you know, this guy got whacked, that guy, you know, they used to talk about it very freely, you know, in front of me as a kid, you know, and, you know, you know, I realized, you know, seeing it and hearing about it are 2 different things, you know, and when I seen it and the blood was splattering all over me, you know, while I was wrapping an apron around his fucking hand, you know, that's when I think.
What was in your mind at the time you seen that? What was actually running?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if I wanted to fucking run. I don't know if I wanted to help the guy. I was getting yelled at because I had the guy in the joint, you know. So, I mean, I was a confused kid. You know,
and the numbers were probably 4 against 1. The guy they were whacking, there was him, and there was getting whacked, and there was 4 guys probably, and there were 3 guys. I know the numbers are never equal. Is that what you seen?
Something, yeah, right.
Did anything reflect on you that, you know, you're in the neighborhood, you see a guy get whacked, did any bells ring in your head?
No, I mean, you know, it was my adrenaline was going so fast, you know, and you know,
Did it intrigue you? Did it excite you?
of course it did as a kid. You know, it wasn't me, you know, and
Well, that's the first thing that comes to your mind. I'm happy I'm not the one getting whacked.
you know, but that was the first time I think it really hit home. You know what I mean? And I seen it, you know, and I had to go wipe the blood off myself, you know, and you know, and I said, what the fuck, you know.
Well, yeah,
Then after the cops came, they made us close the joint down.
It didn't stop you from getting hooked up.
I couldn't wait to go back and talk about it. I had to talk about it in the cab stand. You know, we went around the corner, they closed the preacher's joint, we went around the corner to the cab stand, you know.
And at that time, you were connected with Paulie.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what happened? What happened as you got older now?
That you know, it was just part of, you know, I thought that was normal life. After that point on, I thought that was part of being normal. You know, my whole value system was completely opposite of normal. It was, I mean, from when you open your eyes in the morning, you know what I mean? Everything is completely opposite in the world that I came from.
But you were aware of what was going around.
Of course I was.
I mean,
at that
you can't
time.
use an excuse that this happened, that happened. You were aware of everything that was taking place.
And you want to know something? I was excited about it. I was greedy. I was selfish. I had already went through the process. I mean, they trained me as a kid, you know, 2 or 3 years, you know, before I seen that first hit, you know, and you know, and I guess, you know, I was excited. I was excited. It was exciting. It was, you know.
But you had an opportunity to walk away.
Of course I did. Of course I did. You know. And
as you progressed with the, you know, Paulie, Vario, what was the next steps? What were you getting involved in? I guess as you get older, things have become a little more serious and.
Everything, D. Everything. I mean, you know, you name it. You're part of that world. You know, you become a part of it. It becomes you. You know, you're completely different. You know, you're completely different.
And what was Paulie? What were they using you as?
You name it. I mean, from washing cars, cleaning up bodies, to to digging holes and putting the fucking bodies in, to making pizzas. When I wasn't doing that, I mean.
Well, at that point, and you know the rules, as far as the wise guys are concerned, if you're not 100% Italian, you're never going to be made. So you knew you were never going to get to a position that most of the people that were your mentors were.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter to me at that point. I'd have done anything to be a part of that world. I would have.
You were that fascinated with it?
That fascinated. Of course I was. I mean, it was addicting. It was addicting. Totally addicting.
Well, what was addicting about it? The people respected you because you were part of the mob, which a lot of people do. You know, every time.
They feared us. They didn't respect us. They feared us. I mean, today I could say that. Back then I thought it was respect. It was fear then. They feared you. You know, and I mean, it's a ego trip. It's a whole mind. It's a whole different insanity. It's a whole different subculture that I was part of. You know.
Then you got involved in a heisting. What the Lufthansa heist was?
The first big score I made was Air France in '67. $500,000. I was a kid.
How much was your end?
60,000.
How much was the take?
400.
400,000.
420,000.
Paulie got 340 and you got 60?
Well, no, there was about 6 ways. 6
well,
ends.
Paulie got more than everybody else.
Of course, he got 2 ends.
That's the way they count. They count the Chinese way, you know.
You know that. But you know what kind of money that was back then? 60,000 was a lot of money.
How fast did it take you to get rid of it?
Oh, it took me a year or so to blow it.
Oh,
but
so you did. You stretched it out
yeah,
pretty good.
I stretched it a little bit.
And where'd you go after that? After the Lufthansa heist, where else?
No, that was the Air France heist. We went to Vegas. We went to Vegas that weekend, and we came back. I mean, you know, we were big shots. I mean, that's what made us. You know, that's what made me as I was in my 20s.
And you felt important.
Of course, I felt
being around
important.
these people, you felt secure. You felt important. You felt that you had a value to life.
I thought I did at the time. Of course, you know. I mean, it's a whole different.
Where did they gradually take you from there? Where did you go from that heist? I mean, I know you did.
From that heist, it was carte blanche at the JFK. I mean, first guys in our family, we ran a portion of that airport. It was every racket you could think of that we went to. Every hustle. I mean, we didn't stop from when our eyes, when our eyes woke up in the morning till we went to sleep the next morning. You know, I mean, it didn't stop. It was nonstop. Insanity, nonstop.
When did you get involved with the drugs, which they didn't talk about in Goodfellas? You know, I mean, they talked about it, but they just had the wrong drug. You know, and Paulie in Goodfellas, if I recollect correctly, he claims he wasn't involved in drugs, where it wasn't that wasn't the true story.
No, well, I'm going to tell you, in the early days, you know, in the '60s, I think I smoked pot maybe twice. I never seen I didn't see cocaine until I was in my 20s, honest to God. And heroin I didn't see until I was in my, I think, 30s or 40s. And that's the truth. Yeah, I got involved in drugs good and plenty, later on in life. I mean, it went with the lifestyle. It went with the lifestyle. If no one was supposed to do it, everybody did it. Almost everybody did it, you know? I don't think Paulie and, some of the other older guys, but I'm sure that they experienced it. They knew what was going on. I mean, come on.
Well, in Goodfellas, they claimed that he wasn't involved in drugs.
Well, no, that come later on, and he still maybe, don't you fucking do drugs, wink, wink, I mean, it was a joke, I mean.
But you knew, but see, Henry, you knew what these guys were fucking about.
Of course.
They were for themselves. They didn't give a shit.
But
life meant nothing to any of them.
And it didn't mean to me until a certain point in my life. You know what I mean? Until I started to realize the values of a family, the values of a true family, a blood family, not the values of the bullshit family that we had. You know
but
what
you
I mean?
you knew right then and there that they were taking advantage of everybody they possibly can fucking take advantage of.
Absolutely.
That was what they were all
that's
about.
That's what they live for. That's what they fucking
Yeah, but
live
you
for.
should, I'm not saying that what happened. But the point is, when you seen them taking advantage, or you seen them whacking guys for no fucking apparent reason, just for the sake of whacking.
Well, I'm gonna stop them.
Well, you didn't have to stop them, but look at where you went.
Wrong. Of course, I knew it was wrong. You know what I mean? Believe me, I felt it. I got a conscience. Some of those guys, most of those guys that I grew up had no conscience. I mean, they're sociopaths, psychopaths. I mean, they did it for whatever fucking reason they wanted to do it. I mean, I used to,
Well, if
I turned the other way, take the fucking money. I'm going to tell you the truth.
The point is, if we talk to someone from that era, they would say the same about that you were one of the psychopaths that was with psychopaths.
I don't, listen, I know in my heart, I never whacked nobody. I never, I was never responsible
for that guy going to the grave. Could you have prevented anybody from getting whacked that you knew was coming down? Could you have prevented?
Of course. I think, yeah, but you want to know something that would have cost me my life? It would have cost me my life, and I knew that.
You were pretty cunning, I would imagine, in your atmosphere. There's in your environment.
You grow up with someone.
But the point is, there's ways you can do things that if you knew somebody, was he a friend of yours? Any of these people that you knew about was getting hit?
Not at the time.
No. Well, let's talk about the time when you knew your friends were getting whacked. Could you put anybody on notice that it was going to be a hit on them?
If they didn't see what was going on, I mean, I had 11 friends after the sons of robbery get whacked. I mean, come on. After the first one, after the second one, after the third one. I mean, hello? Come on, Tony.
Yeah, well, I understand that. But
Come on, Tony.
Is,
I mean, how many, what am I going to do?
Listen, you did what you did. But the point is, when you see something up front, the way you did, and you weren't, the good side about it, you didn't whack anybody yourself. But the point is, if you prevented that yourself from doing that, you knew you could have prevented one of your friends from getting whacked.
There was no way, Tony. There was no way, Tony.
Okay,
who the fuck was I to go against the
That's
whole
obvious
crew?
you didn't, but the point is, I just
There's no
felt
excuse.
that you should have looked at it that way.
There's no excuse.
No, I'm not saying. I understand.
I own that, Tony.
You've been very frank with me. You've been up here with me for 4 days. We had some great conversations. You've been telling me the way it is, and I respect you for it. The point that your life started to turn when now you're entangled with drugs. You've got your lifestyle. When did they start turning on you?
It started after the Lufthansa robbery. That's when the world became insane. The world that I was in, our world, our sick.
Well, what was happening that made this?
Everybody
occur?
started getting whacked, and we knew where it was coming from. I mean, they weren't satisfied. They were not satisfied with $8 million. Come on, in 1980.
But you already knew this. You knew that these guys, if they weren't, you knew they were always going to take the end that they wanted to take, and they gave everybody the crumbs. This is the way it was.
And they still want them more. And they still want them more. That's when it started to turn. When the boss, the best friend, the guy you give up your fucking life. I'd have put a gun in my mouth, honest to God, most of my life for those people. I would have. That's how brainwashed I was. Before I thought I'd ever be a rat. Before I ever thought I'd be a stool pigeon.
But you knew that the fact is that these people were this way.
Wow, I've seen it. Then I mean, it took reality. It took reality to see these. All my partners all going down, boom, 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 around me.
And what was the reason that they didn't whack you?
I was close. I was close with Paulie. I was close with Jimmy. And they still had a purpose for me. They still needed me to move the heroin for them. You know, after that, that's
Yeah,
how
you
crazy.
were a user, so they used you till they could not use you no more.
Exactly.
You know, and Jimmy Burke. Tell me who Jimmy Burke was.
He was the Irish boss. Believe me, he was the boss of the Westies. He controlled all the Queens. He had the district attorney Macklin's fucking off in his pocket. He controlled the whole Queens DA squad. He was a powerful man, very powerful man in the city.
How many guys were he responsible for whacking?
60, 70 that I know of.
And what was your relationship with him outside? Now you got Paul Vario, that's your boss, correct?
Yeah.
The guy you were listening to.
Sure.
Then you got, how did this mix? You know, Paul Vario was with the with the Italian crew, and Jimmy Burke was with the Irish crew. When did that blend?
That started shit back in the 60s.
No, those two people. I'm not talking about the when
They hooked
were,
up when I was a kid.
They were already.
Yeah.
And when did it start to change for you, where you started to see that there was no way out of here but one way, and the way you went? When did that start to happen?
You know, I never thought I'd ever go that way. I don't know. You know, it was a process that I went through. You know, it was a process.
But don't you? I'm just going to ask you a question. You know, as a kid, you know, you gave us your background as a kid. You always had security around you. Sure. You know, you had wise guys around you, or you had somebody, your friend. You always had that security. And naturally, as you grow up, you've got that security. Then when the security starts to wear out, that you don't have the security,
Yeah.
What was your decision then? You went to the government because that was
came
the
to me.
security.
The
That was your security blanket.
Well, you know, at the end, it was me and my wife, and my two kids against the world. You know.
What happened? What took you to that? What was the?
It was a process. I mean, a lot of things.
Okay, but
a lot of things.
What was the pivotal thing that took you to the point to roll? What was the one
I
thing?
think it was the heroin business. The heroin business. It was a number of things. I mean, the killing all of my partners. I mean, Tony, it was just such a, you know, I don't know, so surreal today. Yeah, I can't even describe it. You know.
Well, what did they say to you specifically?
Who?
Jimmy Burke. Was there was something? Or
I was getting set up. I mean, I was supposed to go whack my partner's son. They put the okay on my partner's son. I knew I was getting whacked. I got popped. Which was, you know, be in the business, but don't ever get pinched. You know, I knew the day they threw that half a kilo in my fucking lap and told me to move it, that my world was over.
And while this was all taking place, and you were about to roll, you had kids at the time?
Sure, I guess.
What did you think of that? You knew you're a father. You got kids watching your whole lifestyle.
I was a selfish bastard all my life. I mean, I thought money was the root of all evil. I mean, you know, was the answer to all life's questions. Money. You know, I didn't realize, you know, that it was the security of my family. You know what I mean? And I thought that would.
But didn't
my
your kids,
absence.
Didn't your kids have a bigger value than money?
Of course,
I mean,
of course they did. They were kids at
I know.
the time.
So the point is,
They
you
were
knew that
kids.
you were going to take. How many kids did you have?
Two.
Two. You knew your kids were watching this lifestyle of yours.
They didn't see it. I hid that from them. My wife was Jewish, and fortunately, she hid a lot of that insanity from from my children and my in-laws. You know, they kept them sheltered. You know, truly sheltered. You know, and but they you know, at the end they started getting a little older and they started to ask questions. You know, what happened to Uncle Tommy? What happened to Uncle Junior? What happened to Uncle? You know.
What was your explanation to them?
I made excuses.
They died of heart attacks?
I made excuses. You know, you tell them a story. What are you going to tell them? You know?
But you knew that you were in control of this ship. You were in control of your family. You knew they were going to get older.
They were very well sheltered. They were very well sheltered.
Okay, let's get back to, you know, to when you were going to cooperate with the gun. You did who threatened you? Any of them threaten you in any way, shape, or form? You know, Jimmy Burke, Paul Vario?
No, of course not.
Before this happened?
Well, they told me don't use your product, you know.
Yeah, but the point is there was a
In the
reason
meantime,
why
I got
you were
strung out on it.
It was a reason why you were rolling. You weren't rolling because you were in great shape and the future looked bright
I was
for
rolling
you.
to save my fucking life. To save my fucking life.
And who put you up to? Who told you that you were going to get whacked?
Oh, the government, if everybody...
Well, the government tells you everybody's going to get
No,
whacked.
I'm telling you, they used to come to my
roll.
fucking house every time they find 2 or 3 bodies. They come and they show pictures. They sit my wife down and they fucking lay the pictures out on the fucking table. I was on federal parole. They could walk in my house any fucking time they wanted.
Well, Henry, you know they've done this to a lot of people, using that as a tactic to,
It wasn't a tactic. They planted the seed. They planted the seed.
I know they planted the seed, but the fact is...
I made the decision. I made the final decision. Because I knew it was death.
Paulie or John...
Paulie never threatened me. No one ever
threatened.
No, none of the people ever threatened
Then
me.
let me ask him, why'd you open up on him?
What do you mean why did I open up on him?
Right.
Because the deal I made with the government at the end was you cooperate in the Lufthansa heist, and if we catch you one fucking lie, everything you tell us, you know, will and would be used against me. You know.
Okay, let me just ask you a question. Very poignant. They say that, but you know that's fucking bullshit.
Tony.
You know that, you know, I'm not saying, but there is times that you have to stretch.
Tony, let's get a little bit more off.
Okay.
You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
You know,
but,
this
but,
is not the, what is this, the Supreme
no,
Court
but the
after
point is,
Lufthansa
you
heist?
know,
Forget
you
about
know that they're not
I'm not
telling
here
you
to-
the truth. You knew that they...
I know they were telling me the fucking truth.
Well, the point is,
I heard my hit being ordered on the fucking...
I'm not saying you didn't hear that, but I'm saying the fact is that if you twisted something one way towards the other way, so you know that's all bullshit with them.
Tony,
No, it isn't.
Tony, yes, it is. Tony, we're talking about life and death here. I mean,
I'm recognizing you're going to get whacked. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying what they said to you, the government. I'm talking about the government now.
They planted the seed. I made the decision, Tony.
I'm not saying you didn't make the decision, but the fact is that they plant seeds, and sometimes they favor it towards themselves more than anything else. You know that, Henry.
Tony, I was there, Tony. I was there in the fucking pits,
I'm not saying
Tony.
you weren't.
I was there in the trenches,
You didn't
Tony.
hear them saying you're going to get whacked.
Fucking holes,
but I'm
Tony.
saying,
I heard.
Okay,
I heard.
Let me just back up a little bit. How many times did they question you about your testimony you were about to give? Whoever, I don't know who, Paul. How many times did you go through a rehearsal, making sure this was
a few times, sure. That was but I never fucking lie. I mean, listen, I told how the fuck it was.
I'm not saying you lied. I'm saying, but they never distorted anything that happened in no way.
I didn't see them distorted. They told me if it wasn't 101% true, we don't want to hear about it. That's what they told me. And you want to know something? And eventually I believed them, because I didn't believe in the fucking in the New York second. I didn't believe in the beginning, but I did eventually.
And everything that you told to go, everything that was.
They didn't want to hear one. If it was 100. If it was 99% true, they didn't want to hear it. And I'll tell you, the government, that's the way they operated with me. I don't know how the fuck they operate with guys today, but that's the way they operated with me.
Well, everybody's rolling today. Today became a fashion.
No, it's a fucking joke.
I'm not. Don't misunderstand where I'm taking you. I want to hear the truth. I don't want to put words in your mouth. If this is what happened to you, this is what happened to you. I'm not here, and you know the type of guy. I'm not here to intimidate you.
I know that.
And I don't want to bring. I know it's a lot. Believe me, I know there's a lot of bad memories. Nobody's going to tell me that there's not. There is. What did the government actually do to you from the?
What they do? They saved my fucking life, Tony. I mean, the bottom fucking line, from where I was going in a fucking hole, Tony. That's what they did. They saved my life and my family's life. Burke would have came after me and killed my wife and my fucking 2 kids to get to me at the fucking end. Period. The government saved my fucking life.
Do you really would think he would have went that far?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know what this fucking guy was capable of doing. Don't forget, I was with this guy for fucking 20 years.
He would have killed your kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He would have come to my fucking house and drowned. I locked the 2 of them in the fucking refrigerator until I came there. Believe me. That's the kind of fucking people that I grew up with, that I fucking hung out and would have gave my fucking life at one time in my life. Believe me. That fucking man would have locked my kids in the fucking refrigerator.
What happened to him?
He died in jail.
From your testimony?
From my testimony. No, from his fucking murders or whatever. You know what I mean? From my testimony.
How
You want to turn it around?
No, I'm just saying.
No.
Was he part of what?
Of course, he was the fucking. He was the fucking. The brains of the outfit. You know?
He was over Paul Valley, or they were parallel?
Nah, I mean, one was Irish. It's a whole different fucking mindset.
Okay, let me take you. Let me calm you down a little bit, because I don't want to get you bent out of shape.
No, I ain't
The
bent out of shape.
characters. Let's
But,
get back to the movie a little bit, and we'll take a
Sure.
different path for a while.
Here we go.
The characters in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, when you were doing the movie, what was the most interesting part about? But you know, you were a consultant for the movie. You got
sure, got a lot of money. You know, it was. I didn't know what the hell was going on when they were making a movie. Writing the book was the hardest, I think. You know, that's when it. You know, it was like going to confession. It was it was a sense of therapy for me at that point in my life, you know? I mean, I couldn't forgive myself. After, believe me, Tony, from the first fucking time to the last fucking time I went on the stand, I couldn't forgive myself. Believe me, I could not fucking forgive myself. And it took me, there was a process that took me must have 15 fucking years to finally forgive myself. To really be okay with myself, you know? And it's, believe me, you're a good interviewer, and it brings it back.
Henry, I
mean,
believe
you know,
everybody's got to live with their own constitution.
Well, I mean,
that's the bottom line. Anybody can do whatever they want. In their own head, in their own life, they got to live with their own constitution.
Tony, did you ever dig a fucking hole? Did you ever put a fucking human being in the fucking ground and throw some lime on top of them? Tony, it's not a nice fucking thing, Tony.
It's not.
Tony, it's not a nice fucking thing, and believe me, you know, believe me, it takes a while to fucking to work, you know, to work through it, something like that. You know what I mean? I wasn't a nice fella. I wasn't a good fella, you know, in that fucking life. That life is not a life of good fellas. That's a life of I don't know what.
The movie made a great name for itself, calling it Goodfellas.
You know, it's a whole different thing. But you know, hey, I'm not an actor. You know,
what turned you around?
What turned me around?
In your head, that made you comfortable with life?
I don't know. There was so many things, Tony. It was such a process for 25 years.
Did the movie help you?
Yeah, it was therapeutic, absolutely. You know, everything. This is therapeutic for me. It is.
The guy that wrote the movie did a great job. The guy, what was his name?
Nick,
is he as nice as he seems on, or?
He's a super.
Did a great job on on the book.
I mean, you know, and that was a horrible process for me too, you know. And listen, you know, I made up my mind. Listen, I was going to go straight. I was going to tell the truth. I was going to be a human being. I was going to learn how to be. I didn't know how to be a human being when I came out of that world. I didn't. I wasn't a human being. When I came out of that world, I started to become a human being. You know, and then you know, and it took a process. You know, and somebody told me, you know what, you got a soul. You know what, you can get through this, and I did. You know, the government they didn't do a lot for me. They didn't do a lot for me, but I didn't know. I gotta go see a shrink, a psychologist. I didn't know all about that stupid shit. They wanted no part of that. You know what I mean?
They want to send you to a shrink?
Yeah, you know, and I should have went. I don't know, you know, but you know, over the years, I've you know, I've worked through all my problems, you know, and I've still had problems, you know, as you know, I got in trouble, and they set me up. The DEA years ago, you know, after in 1987, I got set up. And I was facing life again, you know, and everybody rolled on me. And they lied. Every motherfucker lied. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Well, let me just, you know, I know we're talking about a particular agency, but it's part of the government.
Well, the FBI never asked me to lie. And they says if it wasn't 100% true, they didn't want to hear it.
And they couldn't help you in this triangle that you were in with?
No, they helped me if I got convicted. And I knew I was getting convicted. I had good lawyers, and I went for a ton of money. You know, most of the money I got from the movie went for lawyers, and therapy, and rehabilitation, and that's when I started to heal.
And how did you feel? Just going to touch on it. How did you feel towards the guys that lied against you?
I didn't lie against anybody.
You made that clear.
How did I feel? I just says, you know, poetic justice. What was I going to say?
And what happened in that situation?
Nothing. I got convicted. Yeah, I did a few years, sure. Yeah.
And how'd they treat you in jail?
I walked the yards. I walked all the yards I ever went to. The feds wouldn't put me.
That's the one thing about you. You don't give a shit. You walk all over the place. You don't care, which is unique.
Listen,
I understand. You got to give yourself credit for that.
My day comes.
Well, that's all bullshit. You know, you and I both know that bullshit to everybody. You know, I don't know if I went into it. They gave a contract for Sammy, and that never happened. Which was he was having a picnic out in Arizona. Nobody gave a shit. That's all bullshit. You know, because number one, your life is practically, in the sense of the people you grew up with, they're not around no more anyway. No. They're all dead.
Every single one of them.
There ain't nobody coming out of the woodwork. And but in jail you.
I walked every yard. I had to fight. I had to get lawyers to release me out of the hole because they kept me in PC. You know, listen. I walked the yard and I did what I had to do and I did it. And it's 25 years ago, Tony. 25 years after Tony. You know what I mean?
Okay, let's get back to Goodfellas for a minute. Which one of the characters in Goodfellas you think was really on target?
They all were. Joe Pesci, every single one of them. I mean, they nailed it. Every one of them nailed it. Like, I mean, was
Joe Pesci didn't make a big reach, as I said. He did a great job. Did a great job playing that character. We were, you know, we're in the same atmosphere in Newark.
But I was a real person. I wasn't a character. You know what I mean? That's,
No,
that's the difference between Godfather and Goodfellas. You know, and that's one of the reasons I think Scorsese today, he made a piece of art. It's not a piece of art. That's reality. You know.
You think it was? How would you compare it to Mean Street?
I mean, same thing. It was right on. I mean, you know, as a kid, that Mean Streets I went to see a dozen times. You know.
Mean Street was very similar, right, to the atmosphere.
It was a good situation.
How'd they treat you? How did the actors treat you?
Good.
How did De Niro treat you?
Good. They all treat me like, you know, great, fantastic. I just seen them again. You know,
You had a reunion at Mateo's in.
Yeah, just last week.
Great
couple
restaurant.
Weeks ago. Yeah.
Great restaurant. Frank
Nice
used to go there
people,
all the time,
nice
and
people.
we used to have a ball. The train is still going around the bar.
No, yeah, it is. Absolutely, yeah.
Frank put that train there. Frank gave that train to Matty. Matty's not around no more, but Frank gave Matty that train.
Food is excellent. Still is.
Okay, out of it all, now that you're satisfied with what happened, what is your, you're on the circuit, you're traveling all over the country, you've got videos coming out, you're doing something for CBS, 60 Minutes. What is, from everything that happened to you, what do you feel that your message of everything that happened to you, there's going to be a lot of kids watching this tape. What do you feel is important?
Don't do it the way I did. I mean,
well, those days will never come back.
Of course.
You and I both know that.
Those days are gone.
Those days are gone.
I mean, the kids know in their heart, right from wrong. Just don't do it the way I did. Those movies are real. Goodfellas is real. I don't care about all those other movies, but I'm going to tell you. I mean, that's the real deal. You see, just try to be today. Be a grain of sand better. That's what I try to do. And I try to tell these kids that you can change your life. If you're going down the wrong path, you can get off that path and go the right path. And you can stop the drugs and stop everything else that you're doing. And you know what you're doing. Those kids out there know what they're doing. Well, they're pretty smart to these fucking kids.
How do you reflect to the guys that are rolling? Today became a fashion. Everybody's rolling on everybody. I mean,
I'm talking to the kids that,
right.
You know what I mean, that don't have the opportunity. You know what I mean? I mean, they get stuck. They think they can't get out of that fucking lifestyle. They can get out of that lifestyle, and they can do the right thing. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot of people lived in the same circumstances and walked away from it. So kids today, it's very simple message. Yeah. The point is, everybody's fascinated. You got the Sopranos, #1 show on television. Goodfellas broke all kinds of records.
Yeah, but look at the Sopranos. The guy killed his girlfriend, his wife, future. Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean,
well, it's television.
I mean, come on.
But
I mean, that's reality too.
Right.
I mean, that's for real. That's for real.
I don't know if that really. I don't know a guy that whacked his wife. I don't know anybody that I knew that did that.
I heard a few stories. Stories.
The possibility.
But,
Mark was a little tough in the back in the day on its own merit. So the message out there that you want to see is that
you can change your life. You can change your life.
Let me ask you one
thing. It's not easy. It's not easy. Believe me.
Did God ever come into play in your life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course. Of course.
Because probably most people never get into that. He's up there. And
I was an altar boy. I mean, come on. Something kept me alive. I don't know what the fuck kept me alive. Honest to God. Believe me, it wasn't my genius. It wasn't me. You know what I mean? My mother told me when I was a kid, you got 2 guardian angels, Henry boy. Not 1, 2. He said, I can say you need 2 guardian angels, and she gave me 2 guardian angels, and that's what I honest to God.
If there's one,
I wore one out, and and I got the second one. Fortunately.
If there's one thing you would change, what would you change in your life if you had the opportunity to change it? We know what
you mean as a kid.
As a kid, what would you change?
I would have stayed away from those. I would have listened to my father. I would have listened to my old man. I listened to my father. All my father wanted me to be was an electrician. He was an electrician, and he started a union, and that's all he wanted from me, And I broke his heart. I did.
He was alive while this was all taking place?
Yeah.
Is your mom still living? Or?
No, she's passed out. But I broke her heart. Oh. I broke a lot of people's hearts. But, that's...
Everybody's got, like I said, everybody's got a path that they got to take. Some work, some don't work. The amazing thing about you, and it's amazing that you're all over the place. You made it a profession, which is fantastic. You took something that I know you. Do you regret it? Any of it?
Of course I regret it. Of course I regret my life. Of course. I don't get. I mean, I ain't got millions and nothing like that. But of course I regret it. Sure, if I could change it, of course I'd change it. I can't.
No, you can't change it. But
So,
you
you
could
know.
say, you know, it's nice to hear that, you know, there's things that you did that you wouldn't go back and do.
Absolutely,
That's you know, you're saying it the way it is, and that's what it's all about. You know.
And I appreciate you having me on your show. And
Well, I
let's,
mean, Henry,
let's
I
do it
just
again.
listen. We take, you know, we all pick our path, and unfortunately, but you're doing something with your life now, and that's the bottom line. You know, you got a wife, you got a kid in Guam someplace. I'm not telling you where he's at. He's in Guam. He's on an island in Guam. There's an Italian restaurant down the street from him.
Yeah.
So if anybody's looking for him, right.
Catch him in those.
Henry, thank you very much.
Nice pleasure.